Hello all, Biohacker Pro here. I hope it's not too loud out here. I'm having to do this video in the backyard for obvious reasons. Well, reasons that will become obvious. They may not be now. What I want to talk to you today about and share with you is information about trapping. Trapping it basically means using traps to catch animals. The purpose and reason for that can be different. Typically, it's one of three reasons. One, you're trapping them for their fur because some furs are worth money. Two, you're trapping them for food because animals are good to eat, generally speaking. Or three, sign language three, they're a nuisance animal and you need to get rid of them for some reason. So there's different ways of doing this. There's so many kinds of traps, and over the course of however long man's existed, there have been many different kinds devised. Today I'm going to talk to you about steel traps. Traps made of steel. You know, some of this will be obvious. And some of the different kinds that I have used and I use. There are other types besides the ones I'm going to show you. Bear that in mind. But these are common ones that if you talk to anyone who calls themselves a trapper, these are the traps they're going to be talking about with you and showing you and thinking about when you say trapping. So they're basically divided into two categories, and there's another category that's not actually a steel trap I'm going to show you as well. But the two main categories of steel traps are leg hold. Guess what they do? Hold the leg. And killer traps. Guess what they do? They kill. They're supposed to kill instantly, and in almost all cases they will. Though I have seen a possum in a killer trap turning his head and looking at me. So they don't always work 100% of the time, but almost, I would say 99.9999% of the time a killer trap will kill. So let's start with the leg holds. These are going to represent the kinds of traps you see in old trapper movies for the most part. And among the leg holds, there are different types. And the types among the leg holds are divided by the type of spring they use to power the trap. This is what is called a long spring trap. This is the spring, provides the power to run the trap. And more specifically, it's a single long spring trap. Can you guess why? There's only one long spring. There are traps like this that have a long spring on each side. That's a double long spring trap. Okay? I might as well tell you the parts of the trap. That's important to know if you're going to talk about them, right? So as we covered, this is the spring. This is a chain, obviously. This particular little flappy piece of metal is called the dog. This piece in the middle is called the pan. And these are the jaws. There are different types of jaws. For the most part, as far as I know, right now the only legal types of jaws in the United States, and probably every state, are smooth-jawed. They're called smooth-jawed because it's a smooth edge. In the movies and the cartoons, you'll see a trap like this with teeth on it, right? Those used to be legal, or not illegal, but these days only smooth jaws are what you're going to find. And in some cases, you may even find a smooth jaw trap that has little pads attached to the inside. They're supposed to be more humane, and they probably are a little less painful. I've never used the type with the pad. I just use smooth jaw traps. So this is a single long spring. You'll notice there's a little V, if you can see it. There's a V in this pan. That denotes the brand. This is a Victor. Victor is a common brand of trap. They've been making traps for a long time. This is another form of foothold or leg hold trap. This uses springs that have coils. You can see the coil here, right? It's a coil spring. So this type of trap is called a coil spring trap. Now, in some cases, you'll have a trap like this with one coil spring. That's a single coil spring, and this one has two, so it's a double coil spring leg hold. You may have noticed too, well, this, like the other one, has a dog, and it has a pan, and it has a chain. I want to show you, you probably noticed the difference in sizes. This is little, this is bigger. Leg holds come in different sizes, and they're based on what you're trying to catch. If I use this to try to catch something as big as even a raccoon or a coyote, I'll pull his foot right out. I won't catch him. This is for smaller animals like mink or muskrat. That's what I trapped back in Missouri when I was doing a lot of trapping. Those were the two common animals I would use this one for. This is a number 2, is the size this is referred to as. This will be a number 1, this is a number 2. And a number 2 is strong enough and big enough to hold things like a coyote and a raccoon. Anything larger than a coyote, this would not be useful for. You couldn't catch, probably would not be able to catch a beaver in this. They would pull out. A wolf, no way, they'd pull out. An otter, no, it's a little too small for an otter. For an otter, beaver, wolf, you need number 3 and number 4. You need a bigger, stronger trap for that. But for the average trapping kind of person who's trying to catch some food, a number 2 is perfect. Pretty much anything that steps in it in the area you're in is going to stay caught. Alright, so these are leg holds. Now let's talk about the killer traps. We'll start with the little one. Some people will also call these body grip traps, which technically, yeah, they grip the body, but I think that's kind of a silly name. These are killer traps. The old trappers, the seasoned trappers, are going to call these killer traps. Or they may refer to them as conibears. Now, they refer to them as conibears because the most common brand, at least used to be, the most common brand of traps like this were made in this, I guess it was a company called Conibear as far as I know. But so they may be called conibears or body grip traps or killer traps. I call them killer traps. So what we have here, you see a spring. This powers it. We have, this is the dog. Well, this is not the dog. This is I guess you call it a lever. I don't really know what we used to call it. We just knew what it was. This would be the dog, for sure. Let me give you a side view. So you can see the dog moves around on this. This moves around on this. Okay. I'll show you how to set these in a minute. But so this would be a small, you can imagine the kind of animals you'd want to use this for. Basically whatever you catch with this has to fit through, right? So mink, perfect. Muskrat, perfect. I have caught squirrels in it unintentionally, perfect. And small possums I've caught in them too. Pretty much anything else, you might get something bigger like a coon poke his head through, but I doubt that it would hold on. It might hold on to him, but it wouldn't kill him. Probably not. It's not for coons. If you're trying to target a raccoon or anything bigger than a mink or a muskrat, don't use this. Or, oh, this is also good for rabbits. Very good for rabbits. If you find a trail in the grass or under a fence where you know that's a rabbit trail or probably is a rabbit trail, this is a perfect trap for that trail. Okay, while still on conibears or killer traps, I'll just show you that they come in different sizes. This one is larger, has 2 springs, but the working components are the same. We have this and we have the dog. Okay. The smaller one didn't have hooks on the spring. I don't see a hook. But the larger ones, anything bigger than the one I just showed you, is going to have a hook on each spring. And this is because once you get one of these springs compressed, you hook it. And that keeps it safe while you're setting it, so that you more than likely won't get hurt by it if you're careful, if you follow the safety rules that I will eventually tell you. So there's a hook on each side to hook the spring while you're setting it. We'll talk about sets in a different video. Right now I just want you to understand about traps. You can get these and the other ones I showed you on Amazon. A trap this size on Amazon is probably about $8 to $10, brand new. You'll notice this one's a little rusty. Rust is good. I want rust. We want rust on our traps. It makes them blend in better with their surroundings, seem a little less conspicuous to human eyes, and probably animals as well. Plus, once you have a good coating of rust on your trap, you can dye it. Now, dyeing is something that trappers have done for centuries to camouflage and preserve their traps from further rust. And well, mostly camouflage. It doesn't really prevent rust. What I used to do back in Missouri is I'd gather up walnut hulls from the walnuts that fell, boil them in something outside over a fire, half a barrel or something, or half a drum, and then I would put my traps down inside and let them sit in that what essentially was black dye. And when I pulled them out, they'd be black. So a little coating of rust is good for that. It soaks up the dye and helps you do that. And I have one more killer trap I want to show you. Oh, before I leave this one. This, as you can tell by the dimensions of the entrance, the hole here, this is very good, perfect actually for raccoon, possum. That's mostly the kind of animal you're going to find. It's too small for a beaver. Don't try to use this on a beaver. They get big, and they'll get their head through here, but that's about it. And for a body grip trap or killer trap, you want the animal to actually get his whole body in. And I'll show you why when we set it and set it off, and that will make sense to you. And yeah, I have volunteers down here. Barry Allen has volunteered to show us later how this works. One more killer trap. I want to show you the one that actually is good for a beaver. That's this guy. Now, killer traps, size-wise, you remember the leg holds I referred to as a number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. Killer traps are referred to in different numbers. The small one, you'd call this a 110. This medium one is a 220. If this only had one spring, it would be a 210. This is a 330. I've gotten it a little, my dog's a little tangled here, I think. No, it's not. Now, as you can see, the springs on this guy are beefy. If you set this and put your arm through it, you're going to break your arm. Guaranteed. You will have snapped arm. This is super strong. This will kill a beaver pretty much instantly. You'll notice it has the same working components, and the dog, right up here, and the hooks, very, very necessary. The hooks. And you may be asking yourself at this point, you might, how's a guy supposed to, or a girl, supposed to squeeze these springs together to compress it and get the hook on it so you can actually set it? Well, unless you're a muscle man like me, there are tools they sell for this, for that specific purpose. They're called, I don't know what they call them, spring compressors, something like that. It's a really long tool with handle, it grips it here, you squeeze it, it squeezes it together, and you hook it. But I'm going to show you another way. There's the way that before they invented tools like that, you know, back when people just trapped and they made do with what they had, I'm going to show you another way to compress these springs that anybody can do of any reasonable strength. You don't have to be muscle man like me. So I'll show you how to do that in just a minute. So one last thing I want to show you, trap wise, because the thing that I hear people talking about that don't trap but want to, they tend to gravitate towards, well, I'll just use snares because they're light and they're cheap and I can still catch animals, right? Well, I have used snares. My dad was a snaring expert. That man could snare anything, and he could tell you where he was going to catch it on its body. He was amazing that way. He's gone now, but he taught me a lot before he left, a whole lot. So this is a snare. It's basically some braided steel cable. A lot of people make these themselves. You can buy the components. You can buy the cable. You can buy these, I don't know what you call them. They're kind of like clamps. You put the cables through and then you squish them and it holds it right there. So this is one end of the snare. Then we have this part that slides on the snare. That's the locking mechanism, and it locks because once the animal starts moving through it and pulls it, it won't loosen up again. The more they pull, the tighter it gets, and it stays tight. That's how a snare works. Very simple design. Absolutely. It works if you're good enough to figure out where to put it to get the animal you're targeting to put its head right here. That's the trick with trapping. These work great if you know what you're doing and are good enough to get your target prey to put its foot right here. The foot has to go here for the trap to work. And with the killer trap, the animal has to walk through the middle for this trap to work, or swim through the middle in the case of beaver or otter. So the art of trapping is not, knowledge of traps is vital. You got to have it. You got to know how to set them, how to work them, how to maintain them, how to repair them, if or adjust them. Sometimes they need adjusted. But that's not even half the battle. The biggest part of trapping is knowing your prey. You can't just know there's raccoons out there and catch them. You got to know how raccoons think. You got to know their habits, what they do, what do they eat, where do they sleep, when do they come out, how do they travel, what attracts them, what repels them, what can I create to provoke a raccoon's curiosity. Where should I put the trap once I have attracted the raccoon? Because they're a four-footed creature, right? They walk a certain way. They have a certain gait. Their feet go in certain places when they walk. You have to know that. And once you know everything about raccoons, you still know nothing about beaver, for instance. You can't trap a beaver the same way you can a raccoon because it's a whole different animal. Their food is different. Their habits are different. Their foot placement is different. Things you can take advantage of with regard to their how they live and what they do is different. You have to know your animals. You got to know what kind of animals live in your area. Know them. Find out what they are. Get out into the wild. When I say wild, I mean just even at the park. Go to the park. Walk around the pond. Look in the mud around the edge of that pond and see what kind of tracks are there. Identify them. Learn to identify them. There's a lot to know about the animals. And it's a passionate subject for me. I will talk about it more. I will, in fact, probably make a short video addressing each kind of animal individually that I have trapped and eaten. Most of what I've caught, I've eaten. There are some things that just you really don't eat, like mink. Those are caught for their fur, typically. But most things you can eat. Especially in a pinch. If you catch something and you're hungry, you eat it. You'll be fine. And it'll probably taste good if you're hungry. Okay, so I'm going to pause this for a moment, and I'm going to, actually I won't pause it. Alright, I've managed to tangle this for a moment. There we go. So let's start with this small #1 long spring. And I'll show you the basics. We want to compress the spring, open the jaws, put the dog over this one jaw, and then the pan has a little notch in it, right there. And once that dog is over the jaw, the pan is lifted and holds the jaw down right through this hole. So it doesn't, the trap cannot close until something steps on this to release that dog, right? So here's how you do it. Small traps like this, just put it right on your leg. Put that guy right there. Press that spring down. Spread these jaws. Now once you have these jaws spread, as strong as this spring is, it's easy to hold open. But don't let go. Because even a trap this small, though it may not break your finger, it's going to hurt like crazy. So once you have the jaws open, put the dog over it, push it down. Now I can hold the whole trap open by holding the dog, right? And now I'm going to lift this up a little bit so I can get to the pan. get the pan, push it up over the dog. Now, notice all my fingers are clear of these jaws. Even if it went off right now, it's not going to snap me. I'm going to use the edge of the jaw. We're going to put this flat. Okay, now when you make a set, when you're setting traps to actually catch an animal, one of the things you always want is the jaws completely flat, and ideally the pan itself as low and flat as possible. Now this, like I mentioned, adjusting traps needs adjusted in order for me to be able to set this pan flat. So what I would do in this case is I would set it off. This particular part of the trap, I would bend a little bit this way, just a little bit, to bring the dog forward more so my pan doesn't have to come as high in order to hold it. Then I would have a perfectly flat set. And the other thing you always do with long springs is you turn the spring towards the dog. All trappers who know what they're doing, they're going to do it just like this. Okay? Now this trap is ready to set. So we'll talk about sets another time, like I said. But this is ready to set. And once you have it set, if you want to set it off safely, you know when this goes off, these jaws are going to go up, right? So I'm going to come up under my jaw. It's perfectly safe in here. And push this down. Now when the animal steps on this, his foot would be here. He would be caught. Okay? That's the long spring. The double coil spring is very, very similar, except we're going to compress these double coil springs. Now this is a lot stronger than that one. So, excuse me, it's going to take a little more effort. But concept is the same. So with this, we're going to use two hands. And once I get the jaws open, I can use them to finish compressing the spring. Get the dog over it. Use that dog to hold that trap. Lift the pan. Always keep the pressure on the pan until your fingers are all clear. There. Now the trap is set. And there's a lot of power in these springs. You'd be surprised. Way back in the day, which was a Tuesday, I caught my finger in one of these in the middle of winter, making a coyote set. And I laid some leaves over it, and I decided it wasn't flat enough for me. And I thought, I'll just be careful. I'll just push it down a little bit. So, hurt like crazy, and I'm pretty sure probably this finger, it's a little crooked now on the tip because of that. Very strong. So to set this off, I'm holding it in from a piece of the frame here. I'm going to reach up under the jaw, push the pan down. That'll release the dog, releasing the jaws, and the springs will take over. Very fast, very strong. So that's how leg hold traps generally are set. There are other types of springs. There's one that's called a leaf spring, I believe it is. Don't use them very much. But it's very much like this, except instead of a coil, it's just a strong piece of metal attached to the frame. So you still have to bend it down just like this, and it works the same way, but it's just designed a little different. But these are the kind you're going to find most of the time. And number 2 coil spring on Amazon is probably $6, $6, $7, depending on the brand you get. Number 1 is going to be cheaper than that. Okay, so I'm going to pause this now and set one of these. Why pause it? Let's do the 110. Okay. So when this is set, this will be the top of the set. So it's upside down basically. I'm going to turn this over. I'm going to let that hang down in the middle. Make sure my dog is here. I'm going to compress this spring. And I'm going to, at the same time, pull on these to help compress it. Now once this is compressed, I can hold it. I can feel the strength of it. You don't want to give it any You don't want to let go. Okay, so here's what it's looking like right now. The dog, you'll notice, has notches in it. There's 3 notches here. Each one of these notches represents how far will the animal have to push this before it goes off. That's what that represents. So I usually just use the one in the middle. So make sure this is where you need it, right in the middle, because these little wires are what the animal hit when they're going through it. I'll bring this over. I'm going to hold this spring, and I'm going to hold this dog down, like so. Now this is set. So now I place this in the wherever I believe an animal is going to go through this. Okay, and I'm gonna take a volunteer. This guy, he don't have a name, but he is, let's say he's a rabbit or muskrat. He's a muskrat, swimming along. Mr. Muskrat just got caught on the neck. Mr. Muskrat's gonna die very quickly. And when I come back and check my trap, he'll be right here, just like that. Okay. Now these larger ones work exactly the same, except like I said, we hook the springs to help us do the set. Now, I told you I would show you a way to compress the spring without being a muscle man, and that's where this rope comes in. Hopefully I'm not, this should be okay here. Alright, so what I have here is a piece of rope with a loop in it. My foot's going to go in this loop. Move it this way. My hook's up on top. I'm going to take this rope, put it through the eye of this spring, up through the eye of this spring. I'm going to bring it back through the bottom eye and the top eye. Okay. So now what I have is this. Hopefully that's clear and visible to you. I'm going to put my foot in here to hold it down, and I'm going to pull up on this. And you may be able to guess more or less what's going to happen. Let's see if it works. Haven't done this in a while because there aren't a lot of beaver down here, though we do have nutria. We got it compressed a little higher. My hook is on. I can now relax it. Alright, so now this spring is compressed. And I can go do the the same thing on the other side, which I will do. May as well, right? Alright. Hook on top. Change legs. Rope through. Back down. Through. Make sure it's on my foot real good. Or good enough. Okay. Crank on that. Get this hook on. Okay. My springs are now compressed. So my springs are now compressed, right? You want to get them right over your hinges. Figure out which way is up on this thing. Dog's on this side. This will be up. So this will be the top. So now the rest of the setting of this is going to be done using my hands. Alright, now you got it this far. This is powerful. Slide these hooks up, make them tight. Get this guy up, make sure these hooks are tight, because if you let go or slip, these are going to save you. Same old swinger, same old dog, same notches, right? I'm going to relax. I'm going to open this a little bit, get that dog on there. Like so. It's on there good. I'm going to hold that down. Get out here where I can put it on the ground. You watch how I'm doing this. I'm holding it down. And I'll let go. This trap is now set. However, you notice we still have our hooks on. If an animal went through it, it wouldn't kill it. It can't go off with these hooks on. So once you leave those hooks on until you get this trap right where you want it, and the very last thing you do is you slide that hook, let it hang, and get it out of the way. You slide this hook, get it out of the way. Now this trap is fully set. It'll kill it'll kill a dog, it'll kill a beaver, an otter, anything that can fit through that hole will die. Alright, I gotta find something to set this off. But I imagine you can. Now, you don't really want to put things like posts and whatnot through your traps, because when they go off, you could bend them. So you know what? I don't really have anything to set this off with properly. So what I'm going to do is re-safe it with the hooks. Get hold of it. Let this dog off. And let it, make sure the hooks are on. Let it go real slow. Alright. Okay. And then I'll just uncompress these springs. This time with my hand. Might be a bad idea. Yeah. Just gotta take your look at this one. All right. Nobody was hurt. That's awesome. All right. And that's what I wanted to show you today about the traps and trapping. Yeah, Barry didn't get to do his act, but that's okay. You got the idea with the Mr. Turtle, right? Same thing would have happened in this guy. All right. Well, thank you for your time. I hope this is helpful. If you have any specific questions of something I glossed over and you want to know more about, let me know. I do intend on doing more videos as far as specifically how to make some sets in an urban, particularly like this, a suburban environment where you know, you don't have access to the great wilderness, but you know there's raccoons out behind this fence. I know there is, and if I wanted to attract them to my yard and get them in a trap, I could. So I'll show you some things like that later in another video. Thank you for watching. Thanks for being patient.